sister raised her glass and said, "Maybe try being a janitor, Elena. You're used to cleaning up messes, right?" The chandelier caught the glint of her smirk, just as my father added, "At least you can't get fired from that." They laughed. I didn't, because while they toasted to my humiliation, I was holding the one thing that could end her career. They say silence is survival, but sometimes the real power is in finally speaking. What would you have said into the mic? Drop your story in the comments. It hadn't always felt this heavy. For years, I convinced myself that if I just kept pushing, collecting achievements like trophies, they'd finally see me as more than the spare part in my own family. But in the Carter house, there was an unspoken rule carved into every dinner table conversation. Samantha wasn't just the favorite. She was the only one who mattered. She was the golden child with the perfect piano recital at age 7, the beauty pageant sash at 10, and the Ivy League letter framed like a museum piece by 17. At every dinner table, her stories were the centerpieces. My father used to pour wine with a grin and say, "Now tell us again about that internship, sweetheart." Me, I was the bright but difficult one. I was the girl with messy hair, too many questions, and a voice that interrupted their picture-perfect scenes. When I got into Boston University with a full merit scholarship in finance, my father barely blinked. "That's decent, I suppose," he said, before pivoting the conversation back to Samantha's summer at Goldman Sachs. I remember standing there with the acceptance letter still in my hand, my cheeks burning, wondering how it could feel so much like rejection. When I landed my first job at a boutique investment firm, no one toasted. No dinner, no flowers. No, "We're proud of you." But when Samantha got promoted at hers, they popped a bottle of vintage champagne and invited half the neighborhood. Even the dog wore a party hat. And yet, I kept trying. I worked twice as long, volunteered for every overtime slot, earned certifications, sat in late client meetings until my eyes burned. I wasn't trying to outshine her. I just wanted to be seen, just once. I kept telling myself maybe next time. Maybe one more win will be enough. Then Mom got sick. She was the only one who ever really looked at me like I mattered. We used to sneak coffee together before everyone else woke up. She'd brush my hair away from my face and say, "You don't have to shout to be heard, Elena. You just have to be sure of your truth." Her death came quietly. Lymphoma didn't care how many times you played the perfect daughter. Samantha flew in for 12 hours, cried once, posed for a family photo in front of the casket, and left before sunrise. My father, he crumbled and retreated into Samantha's world like I never existed. After that, the silence between us became something solid. I was 28 when I lost my job for the first time. No warning, just vague language, downsizing, restructuring. It felt like a punch with no fist. Then came the second firing. Different firm, different state. Same dead eyes across the desk. Same line. "You've been great, but we have to let you go." No explanation that made sense. And then a third. Each one tore another piece of my self-worth. I began to ask questions I had never dared whisper. Was I really not good enough? Was I broken somehow? But something inside me, something stubborn, quiet, and furious, refused to believe it was all just bad luck. The world's most volatile job market didn't collapse beneath me 3 times by accident. So I stopped talking, stopped explaining, and started watching. I moved back to Boston, rented a small walk-up near Beacon Hill, and took on freelance consulting gigs for small startups. It paid less, but it gave me time. Time to think, time to feel the pattern. There were whispers in exit interviews, odd emails from HR, even one anonymous message buried in my junk inbox. "She made sure you were out." Just saying. She. At first I didn't want to believe it, but deep down I knew who they meant, because when Samantha smiled, she never smiled with her eyes. and I had seen that smirk too many times, usually right after I stumbled. Still, I said nothing. I bit my tongue and tried to build quietly, hoping silence would shield me. But that night at the party, when she raised her glass and reduced my life to a punchline, I felt something split open. Not a scream, not a sob, just this sharp, beautiful clarity, the kind that comes right before a storm. I couldn't sleep that night, not because of what she said, but because of how they laughed. The clinking glasses, the echoing giggles, my father's smirk, all of it looped in my head like a cruel lullaby. The shame wasn't new. I had worn it for years like an itchy second skin. But this time it burned, because I finally understood this wasn't negligence. This wasn't bad luck. This was a pattern, a system, a script I had been forced to play the clown in, and I was done. I stopped asking why it hurt. Instead, I began asking why it kept happening. So I pulled out the laptop I'd nearly buried after my last firing. Dusty, slow, but full of receipts. Literally. I opened my old work emails. Yes, I kept backups. Every project, every HR thread, every signed NDA. I started piecing things together like I was reconstructing a crime scene. 3 different firms, 3 firings, no specific performance reviews, no ethics violations. Just phrases like client discomfort, reputation, risk, internal conflict. I highlighted them in red. They glowed like warning signs I had ignored. Then I found it. In one thread from Lexington Financial, an email had been forwarded to HR from a confidential concern inbox. It was flagged as sensitive, but there was no sender. At Mason Reed Capital, the termination note used nearly identical phrasing. Following recent concerns, we have no choice but to end this relationship in alignment with our risk policies. The language was too similar, too rehearsed. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding like I'd sprinted through my own memory. 2 firms, no connection, same message, same invisible knife. I wasn't crazy. I was being erased, systematically. And there was only one person I knew who had both the motive and the malice to do it. Samantha. She didn't need to scream or sabotage openly. All she had to do was whisper. So I made a call. Lindsay picked up on the second ring. Elena. Oh my God, are you alive? Barely, I said, and it wasn't a joke. Linz, I need a favor. Big one. She was my old college roommate, now a cybersecurity specialist, who spoke fluent code, sarcasm, and justice. Quirky, brilliant, fiercely loyal, the kind of woman who could hack your ex's dating profile just to fix your confidence. Within the hour, I was in her apartment, surrounded by monitor screens, Ethernet cables, and the scent of microwave dumplings. She handed me a soda, tied her hair into a bun, and started typing like her fingers were on fire. I gave her everything, the dates of my firings, the firms, the saved emails, even Samantha's company domain. Just a hunch, I said. She looked at me, eyes narrowing. You think she was behind this? I nodded. I think someone wanted me out, and I think she had something to gain every single time. Lindsay didn't blink. Okay, she said. Then let's find the rot. The next few days blurred into one long crawl of insomnia and dread. I walked Boston streets like a ghost, replaying every holiday meal where Samantha complimented me, just a little too sweetly. Every text from Dad asking, can't you just be happy for your sister? Every moment where I doubted my worth because someone I loved had hidden the knives so well, until at 1:14 a.m., Lindsay texted, you awake? Of course I was. FaceTime now, you need to see this. When her face appeared, she looked different, serious, almost pale. Elena, she said, you were right, and it's worse than I thought. She shared her screen. At first it looked like code and gibberish headers, domain logs, metadata trails. But then she zoomed in. scarter@aventacapital.com. Samantha's work email. Lindsay pointed to a timeline of anonymous complaints, all routed through different IPs, but they all pinged back to the same original shadow source. Samantha's office. She submitted complaints to your employers through their internal ethics systems, masked. But the breadcrumbs are here. She used the same VPN node, same routing signature. The timestamps line up with your HR reviews. She clicked open a document, client discomfort concerns around Elena Carter's behavior. Another concerns over Elena's data handling judgment. I stared. My throat closed. She accused me of leaking confidential data, I whispered. Not directly, Lindsay said. Just enough to create the scent of liability. That's all companies need. One rumor with the right tone and they'll cut you to protect themselves. I couldn't speak. I had suspected it. I had feared it. But now, seeing it laid bare, it wasn't paranoia. It was premeditated character assassination. My own sister had torched my career 3 times and smiled in my face every Christmas while doing it. What kind of person does this to their own sister? I finally choked out. Lindsay's voice was soft. Someone who sees you as a threat. That was when I knew. This wasn't about rivalry. This was about erasure. She wanted me gone from the industry, from relevance, from the narrative. But Samantha had made one mistake. She forgot who I was before I was broken, and I was about to remind her. 3 days after Lindsay confirmed it, I found Samantha's invitation sitting in my mailbox like a trophy, stolen off my future. It was printed on thick, expensive linen, probably embossed to make the betrayal look luxurious. Celebrating Samantha Carter, appointed Chief Investment Officer, Aventa Capital. Family only. Below it in gold script, cocktail attire encouraged. I almost tore it in half. Instead, I pinned it to my fridge with a magnet shaped like a cracked wine glass. I needed the reminder. 2 days later, my father called. His voice still held that thin layer of obligation, like I was a chore he had to check in on every fiscal quarter. You'll be there, right? It's an important night for your sister. I wanted to ask him just once if I was ever going to have an important night. If he even remembered what I did for a living. But instead I said I'll come. Not for her. Not for him. I was coming to finish what she started on her stage with her audience under the light of a truth she couldn't outrun. The plan was already in motion. Lindsay had done more than trace emails. She found a backdoor one that could crack the pristine armor Samantha wrapped around herself daily. Turns out Aventa Capital had strict data retention policies, but Samantha, in her arrogance, often worked off her personal MacBook at home. Why? Because she thought the company drives were too slow. She stored everything locally, emails, strategy decks, complaint drafts, probably thinking no one would ever question her. We just needed access. And I knew exactly when. Samantha, like clockwork, posted every curated moment of her life to Instagram stories. The green juice, the workouts, the boardroom selfies. 3 days before the party, she posted a boomerang from a spa retreat in the Berkshires. Caption deserved. Perfect. She was out of town. That night, I waited until 11:30 p.m., drove across the city in silence. Her condo sat on the 12th floor of a luxury high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Charles River. I still had the key. She'd given it to me 6 years ago when she forgot to cancel a meal kit subscription before leaving for a yoga retreat. I never gave it back. The doorman barely glanced at me as I walked in. I looked like I belonged. Because once I did. Inside her apartment looked like a Pinterest board on performance-enhancing drugs. Glass surfaces, backlit bookshelves, untouched fruit bowls. I walked quietly to the marble counter. There it was, her laptop, charging. I plugged in Lindsay's USB custom-coded to scan for keywords: my name, reputation, risk, anonymous HR. It also scanned for deleted files, cloud logs, draft folders, and unsent emails. The screen lit up. Folders pulsed open one by one. And then the results rolled in. Elena Carter, 17 document hits. Reputation risk, 6. Anonymous HR, 3 draft emails. Aventa conflict referral, 1 master file. I opened one of the drafts. We're concerned about Miss Carter's overfamiliarity with sensitive clients. Her tone can be misread. We advise caution. Another past ethical discrepancy suggests she may be unsuitable for client-facing roles. The language was chilling. Strategically vague, but reputationally lethal. Then I found the final nail. A spreadsheet timeline, color-coded by employer. Columns labeled company name, Elena employment date referral window, and memo deployment suggested. At the top, if she resurfaces here, deploy suggestion memo. She hadn't just sabotaged me, she'd scheduled it. I copied everything, every file, every draft, every timestamp. Lindsay had built the USB to encrypt and wipe all traces once the transfer was complete. The light blinked green, transfer complete. I unplugged it, gently closed the laptop, and took one last look around. Framed magazine covers, faux self-help books, an untouched Himalayan salt lamp. Her life looked flawless on the outside. But now I knew it was built on destruction, on curated lies, and carefully engineered silence. I stepped back into the elevator, heart thudding like a drum in my throat. Outside the air was cold, but I didn't shiver, because for the first time in years I wasn't playing defense. I was preparing for the mic. The event was held at the LRA Hotel, a sleek, sterile monument of Boston luxury, perched above the skyline, like it belonged to the gods. The private hall on the top floor shimmered with chandeliers, champagne pyramids, and curated string quartets, playing soft, expensive silence. I arrived alone. No date, no backup, just a navy sheath dress, a clutch, and a silver USB drive tucked inside like a secret heartbeat. The air smelled like peonies and ego. Samantha saw me first. Her dress sparkled like moonlight on polished glass. Her smile was camera-ready. She approached with a kiss to the air near my cheek. "Elena," she said, voice sugar-coated acid. "Glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it," I replied, cool and level. "You look surprisingly rested." She blinked. "Thanks, I sleep very well these days," I said, locking eyes. "Guilt doesn't keep me up." That landed, just for a second. Her smile cracked the corner of her eye, twitching before she turned back to her adoring crowd. The toasts began an hour in. My father took the stage first, raising a glass swollen with pride and blindness. To my brilliant daughter, he said, voice warm, like a brandy he didn't offer me. The pride of the Carter name. A leader, a trailblazer. The kind of woman who doesn't let anyone drag her down. They clapped. I didn't. Then Samantha stepped up. She smiled directly at me like the barrel of a gun. "Before I pass this mic along," she said, "I want to thank you all for being here and for enduring all our little Carter dramas over the years." Her eyes flicked to me. "You've seen me through a lot, promotions, long nights, and a sister who, well," she chuckled, "who got fired again. Maybe 3 times. I've lost count." Laughter. "Sweetie," she said, turning toward me, "maybe try being a janitor. That job suits you better. At least there nobody expects you to deliver quarterly reports." More laughter. Then my father leaned in, voice booming through the mic. Well, she wouldn't get fired from that, so maybe it's a win. Louder laughter. Their faces, the ones I grew up with. Family friends, neighbors, distant cousins. They laughed like I was a sitcom character, like my pain was scripted and approved. But what none of them knew, what not even Samantha knew, was that I came prepared. And I didn't come to walk away humiliated. I came to end the play. So when the laughter died down and the mic was passed off stage, I stepped forward, calm, deliberate. I could hear my heels click against marble. "Mind if I say a few words?" I asked, already reaching for the microphone. Samantha stiffened. My father opened his mouth but said nothing. "Thank you," I said to the room. "I do have something to say, and it won't take long." A hush spread like fog, but what I say tonight will last a lot longer than a toast. I pulled a folded folder from my clutch-sharp white paper against soft blue leather. The silence thickened. "It's true," I began, voice steady. "I've been fired. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And for a long time I thought maybe I deserved it. Maybe I was unlucky or simply not good enough." I paused. Let them squirm. But I did some digging, and what I found wasn't bad luck. It was a blueprint. Gasps, uneasy shuffling, every termination, every anonymous HR complaint, every red flag was planted, strategically, purposefully, by someone who wanted me out of the industry. I looked at Samantha. She didn't blink. I have every file, every draft email, every memo with vague allegations of reputation risk and client discomfort, not written by HR. Written here, I tapped the folder on a personal laptop belonging to my sister. Mouths dropped open. Samantha stepped forward, still trying to control the narrative. "Elena, I don't know what you think you found, but this isn't the time." "No, it wasn't the time when you filed complaints behind fake names either," I snapped back. "Or when you built a spreadsheet with my job history and labeled it Memo Deployment Schedule." A wave of whispers spread across the room. One man, Samantha's boss, I recognized, leaned forward with furrowed brows. I held up the USB. "This contains everything. Already submitted to Aventa Capital's ethics board. Also to 3 journalists and 2 law firms." Samantha's color drained. "And don't worry, I didn't break the law. But you might want to check your inbox Monday morning." I turned to my father. "You always called me dramatic, difficult, unreasonable. But I never lied. I never manipulated. I never erased someone else to get ahead." He didn't respond. His face was stone. "And maybe I'll never be the favorite," I said softly. "Maybe I'll always be the one in the corner. But at least I can say this: I earned every single thing I had. And when someone tried to take it all away, I looked at Samantha. I didn't stay quiet. I fought back. Then I placed the mic gently on the table. Not dropped, not thrown. Just placed, like a closing chapter. And I walked out. No applause, no music. Just stunned silence behind me, and the sound of glass shattering as something fragile hit the floor. The morning after the party, I woke up before dawn, eyes swollen, throat dry, chest hollow. I wasn't sure what I expected. Applause, redemption, closure. What I got was 43 unread messages. The first few were from people I hadn't heard from in years. A childhood neighbor. It was the bravest thing I've ever seen. An old colleague I knew something was off. I just didn't know how deep it went. A distant cousin, Samantha, looked like she'd seen a ghost. Then came the unexpected ones. A former manager from Crossbridge Capital, the firm that fired me second. "I owe you an apology. You were one of the sharpest minds we had." I didn't know. I should have looked deeper. A recruiter I hadn't heard from in 5 years. "If you're open to consulting again, we'd love to talk." Even a short, terse message from someone at Aventa Capital's HR. "We are launching an internal ethics investigation. You may be contacted." I didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. Instead, I put on a hoodie and walked along the Charles River. The sky was just beginning to blush, with morning light casting long streaks of gold across the water. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt the fog in my chest start to lift. And then my phone buzzed again. Dad. The name flashed like a branding iron on my screen. I stared at it. Let it ring. Let it die. A minute later, he texted, "We need to talk. You blindsided us. Us. Not her. Us." Even now, with the printed emails, the timelines, the truth spelled out in cold, damning fonts, I was still the problem. Still, the storm ruining their perfect weather. I didn't reply. By noon, the news had spread. Finance Twitter had caught the scent. Someone from the party had leaked part of my speech, grainy audio but crystal clear meaning. Samantha Carter, Chief Investment Officer, accused of corporate sabotage against her own sister. A leaked tip from inside Aventa confirmed what I already knew. Samantha had been placed on administrative leave pending an ethics review. LinkedIn posts erupted. Industry blogs ran headlines like wildfire. CIO sabotage scandal at Aventa Capital Finance Party turns into whistleblower showdown. And there I was in the middle, not a victim, not a villain, just the one who refused to stay silent. That evening, Lindsay came over with a 6-pack of craft beer and a bag of sushi. She dropped the food, flopped onto my couch, and looked at me like I was a living headline. So she said, picking up a tuna roll, you torched the queen bee in her hive. How's it feel? I smiled, but it was tired, hollow around the edges. Strange, I admitted. It wasn't revenge, not really. She raised an eyebrow. No, I didn't want to ruin her. I just wanted her to stop ruining me. She nodded, and for a while we ate in silence, the kind that only exists between people who have walked through fire together. Later that night, as I was cleaning up, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message. It was an email. Subject line, your story matters. Let's talk. From Dr. Elaine Morgan, Director Women in Finance Leadership Initiative, MIT Sloan. She'd read about the fallout. She'd listened to the leaked audio. She wanted me to come speak, not as the sister who got fired, but as someone who stood up when the entire room expected her to shrink. 2 weeks later, I stood at a podium in a glass-walled conference room on the MIT campus. Rows of young women stared back at me, notebooks open, laptops glowing, eyes wide. I told them everything, not just the sabotage, not just the evidence, but the loneliness, the ache of growing up invisible, the years of quiet shame where every success was filtered through someone else's spotlight. I told them about standing still while the room laughed at me, about walking to that mic with nothing but the truth and a flash drive in my purse. And when I finished, they didn't clap politely. They stood, every single one of them. Later, as the room emptied, a girl maybe 20 hair, tied in a tight bun, oversized blazer, swallowing her frame, approached me with a binder pressed to her chest. I'm scared, she said softly. I want to work in finance, but I'm scared I'm too small to survive in rooms like that. I looked her in the eye. Then make your own room, I told her, and when you do, leave the door open. That night, walking back through Cambridge with autumn leaves brushing the pavement, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Not victory, not vengeance, peace. Not because I'd burned bridges, but because I'd finally stopped building them just to be allowed to cross. Months passed. Samantha's name trended for weeks. Every finance blog, every whispery industry newsletter dissected the Carter scandal like vultures on a power lunch. Aventa Capital confirmed the investigation. Samantha's LinkedIn went dark. No updates. No humble apology, just silence. And strangely, it didn't satisfy me, because I didn't need her downfall anymore. I had already reclaimed something far rarer, myself. Dad never called again. Not after that text, not after the media storm, not when it was obvious the mask had shattered. And somehow, it didn't hurt. It was like watching someone else mourn the version of family you never truly had. I didn't chase him, didn't answer the calls when they came weeks later from old family numbers I no longer saved. I had stopped bleeding for people who cheered when I was cut. I moved out of the city. Not far, just far enough. Portland, Maine. a little coastal town with sea air that carried no expectations. I found a cottage with a crooked front porch, paint chipping in the most charming way. Mornings smelled like salt and coffee, and I made peace with silence. I took on remote consulting work again, but on my terms this time. No more proving, no more climbing broken ladders just to be pushed off by people who never wanted me to rise. Now I chose clients who respected me, projects that fulfilled me, quiet power, not desperate striving. One night, sitting on the deck with a sweater wrapped around my shoulders and the harbor wind in my hair, I pulled out my old laptop, the one that had once been filled with proof receipts desperation. I opened a blank document, typed the first sentence. This is not a story of revenge. It's a story of reclamation. I didn't know then if anyone would read it, but I knew what I'd lived mattered. That voice, the one I spent years softening, had finally learned to echo. I still think about that party sometimes, the way their laughter sliced, the way my hands trembled as I picked up the mic, and how one sentence, one truth, shifted everything. They had mocked me with a joke about being a janitor, but I swept the room clean with the truth, and I didn't do it with rage. I did it with evidence, with poise, with the quiet grace they never expected. Because here's the thing, no one ever tells women like me, the most dangerous woman in any room is the one they tried to humiliate and couldn't break. If you've ever been the overlooked one, the dismissed one, the one forced to swallow pain with a smile, your story matters. Drop it in the comments below. And if this hit home, like, share, and subscribe. Not just for me, but for every woman who's ever held the mic and finally been heard.